Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Welcome to the satsang. This is a time that you can relax and have some question and answers. Sahadev is standing by, and sometimes we do this thing. Maybe we can do this today as well. Sahadev, can you please show yourself? Thank you for the bhajans. And do you remember we used to do this uh, one question and one bhajan sometimes, or two questions and one bhajan? So,
I
uh,
remember.
so please don't go away and don't
Oh
hide
no,
yourself, because
oh no.
uh, we
Okay.
may we may need that this
Oh,
evening. We may do that.
happy to
Okay,
sing. It's
yeah.
fine. That's fine. Thank you.
So that is always a hit, because people like that time to immerse
Mm,
in
mm,
the question via the bhajan. So it is very, very nice.
mm, mm,
And so, we the nice thing about the online, of course, is that it has made the distances. It has made the distances very small. We can connect across the oceans. But of course, it comes with a price. The price is that the retreat becomes a mm, the classes in the retreat becomes items in a buffet menu. I'll have a little bit of this and a lot of that, none of this. And if we were at the Gurukulam, there would really be no choice. We would go to everything because everybody is going to everything. But however, this is the what should I say, pandemic reality. And so, welcome to all of you. And here is a chance to interact with the readings and the studies, and whatever questions there are. And I think that there was also a place to submit the questions. I saw that. Sahadev, can you say something about that? Did you get any questions via that
I
portal?
put in an email address was there, and I was just looking. It doesn't look like there were any written.
There, were there any questions?
No.
No.
I'll have some questions, but I didn't go through the chat box.
No, that's okay. You can just, as I
So,
said, this is just an informal thing. So you can use the raise hand feature. You see here, I have raised my hand. No, not that. That is not the feature. Here in the chat box, there is a raise hand feature. And so
where is the chat box?
so
This
you
one is
can raise the hand if you want to be called on, if you have a question. And I will ask Sahadev also to, please help me monitor how many people are waiting for asking questions, etc. And then we can go from there. Okay, so Mishra ji, so since you already took the trouble of raising the hand physically, so we will go with you. What,
yeah,
Puchiye, what do you want to
yeah,
ask?
yeah. Swamiji, I attended your class on Kathopanishad from when you were giving for people from Bahamas, Swami Shivananda's group. It was
Yes.
very, very, very nice, very illuminating. I have a question I couldn't ask there at that time. So, is the words Sriman, Srimati, Sri connected anything with Shreyas?
Shri. Shri he. No, I think it is more. I'll have to check into it to be absolutely sure. But Shri he is a word in its own right, and it means abundance. Shri he. And
No, Sri and Sriman and
yeah, no,
Srimati.
that man and mati are added to Shri. So
Okay.
Shri is the word, and
Okay.
I'll double check because this is a very involved question. I'll double check to make sure that I'm not giving you the wrong information. But from what I know, it is a word that means Shakti, abundance. So Lakshmi, goddess Lakshmi ji, like that, that the Shri Hi. And to this Shri, we add a, the Pratyaya. Pratyaya means suffix, Matup, which means the one who has, tad asya asti iti. So the one who is endowed with Shri is called Shriman. If the person has got, if the person is a man, and then if the person happens to be a woman, then it is Shrimati. And if it is a neuter gender, Shrimat. You see how it is, the three genders. And then, I mean, we are familiar with these words even in the Hindi language,
Right.
Balavan, same pratyaya. But that
Right.
is akaranta, that is ending in a, so it becomes van. Otherwise, if it's any other vowel, it becomes man. So Balavan, Dhanavan, Bhagavan, it's the same things. And so
Right.
Shriman. Yeah, so
Very.
that is how it is.
And the second question, if I may,
Sure.
so you were telling about the person who was going to a place, two paths, Shreyas and Prayas, and one the person who was taking the path where there are a lot of people, Mela, and the other was a
Yes.
not well lighted path.
Yeah.
And then you gave the example of said ki address of Bhagwan, na Suryo, na Chandrama, na
Yeah.
Pavakam there.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
could you please,
Yeah,
what
yeah,
is that
yeah.
like?
So, this is a specific. I will update everybody else so that they can enjoy the conversation that we are having. So, in the lecture on the Kathopanishad, there were two paths presented, and that is what I was talking about. Shreyas, which is the path of knowledge, the path of freedom from samsara, in other words, path of moksha. Path of moksha is not actually a path, it is just an as though path, because as we have seen even in this retreat, moksha is your own. Is your own nature, and so it's an as though path because of the problems with understanding that, so it becomes a more of a cognitive path. So it's a cognitive path. And so then I just was imagining, visualizing this. So you come at the fork on the road, how, so Shreyas is a very, seems to be very quiet. एक पत्ता भी नहीं हिल रहा है, not even a leaf is moving. And then, there are some whispered conversations between two people in orange. That's all you can see from, up to the first bend. Some few people in orange are going about their day. And the path of prayers is very active. Prayers means samsara. Prayers means those kinds of pursuits that keep us going and going and going and becoming what? More insecure, more sad, more embroiled in the day-to-day loop of action and its results, and more invested in the accomplishments in the everyday. And this is and those accomplishments don't give any happiness at all. And so this is the path of prayers, which I imagined to be like a mela means a fair, a very jolly affair from the sign of it, because it's full of people, because most of the people by default have chosen this path because they don't know better, for lack of knowledge, for lack of viveka, discrimination, for lack of understanding what is it that they really want. They just go because to this place of a big street fair, because that's where they feel safe, because all their relatives are there, all their friends are there, and they just go. and the other route is direct route to Bhagavan. It is in fact a shortcut, because here you have to roam around for several lifetimes before you get to the other place. So they just go straight away, but they don't know that. So they wander around because they are of two things: because they don't know any better, and the second reason is because generally people are afraid of Shreyas. Very frightening. Because if you don't know something, it is always frightening. Like even the rope, which is mistaken for the snake, Shreyas is mistaken for a very difficult and unnecessary path. In fact, even growing up in India, the parents will tell their own kids, you have to have balance in life. And what is this that you're going on this path? If a child or if an offspring is spiritually inclined, they will get worried. If you're sitting and meditating half of the day, they get extremely worried and they try to pull you back. They try to take you shopping, and they try to make you more involved in family matters. And because there is a fear, and so that's how the adage, a little bit of samsara, a little bit of moksha. And of course it is not even possible for the same person to pursue both the paths at the same time. It is just not even possible. You cannot. It's like saying, I want darkness and light together to be existent in the same place. And so, as a joke, I was saying that part of the reason why it is so scary is that Shreyas doesn't advertise itself. There are no spoilers. Shreyas is dot dot dot. Keep on hanging for the next, what is that called? The next installment, and then you will see how this Shreyas is and how it blesses you. Nothing. There is no spoiler, there is no recap, there is no advertisement. So then people don't know much about it unless you go to the guru and unless you do some self inquiry. So that is the first reason it is scary. And the second reason it's scary is that the little bit we know about it, makes it even more scary. Like the verse in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And what is the verse in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where Bhagavan describes Shreyo Marga? He gives his address. If you really want me, this is how my house looks like. My abode is like this. Natad bhasayate suryah. There the sun does not shine. Oh, maybe it's kind of nice ambient moonlight. Na shashanko na pavakaha. No moon. Oh, maybe there are some nice torches, very nice, wonderful candlelight. Na pavakaha, no fire. That includes no vidyut. Vidyut means lightning. There is no lightning, there is nothing. All a pitch dark place. Already it is scary because one is discounting the fact that one is the most luminous entity, self luminous I, and that is the home of Bhagavan. Bhagavan indwells this. In fact, Bhagavan is the self luminous I. One has discounted that. Like the 10th man story, one has not counted oneself, and therefore one suffers. One suffers, and then one suffers from the misapprehension, the wrong understanding, because then one reads the last line, Yadgat Yadgatva Nanivartante Tadhama Paramam Mama. Once you go to this dark and uninviting place, you don't come back. Oh no, give me a little more of Shreyas. So, because of these misunderstandings, people make the wrong choice. The right choice being right there at hand, people still make the wrong choice for want of discrimination, for want of resolve, for want of vairagya, the inability to drop the day to day. In fact, it's not dropping of the actions. Most of the time, it is dropping of the attitude with which the action is done. That is the problem here. And that is what needs to just resolve. You can do any number of action. I mean, look at Pujya Swamiji, how much he did during the course of the day. I mean, the Guru had he had no time at all. One could say that looking at him. Yet he was very relaxed because he was not invested in the outcome of what he did, and his desire to do something was in tandem with Ishvara's desires. There was only one desire, he was merely just allowing things to happen. And so that is what it is. So even choosing Shreyas, the actions itself don't the what you do doesn't make you go back to prayers. It's not what you do, it's the attitude with which it is done. That's why to slowly get out of this, first karma yoga is prescribed. The attitude of worshipfulness with regard to the actions is prescribed, and then after that one is able to let go the ahankara, the I notion. All this is slowly let go of. Now we'll have a bhajan with
Thank you very
Sahadev.
much.
Oh,
Thank you very much, Swamiji.
yeah, welcome. So while the bhajan is going on, you can relax and think of the next question, who wants to ask, etc.
Ram 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 Shri Ram 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 Shri Ram 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 Shri Ram 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 Dasharathanandana Ram 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 Dasharathanandana Ram 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 Dasharathanandana Ram 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 Dasharathanandana Ram Ram Kausaya Ke Ram 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 Shri Rama Sita Ram 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 Shri Rama Sita Ram 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 Shri Rama Raghubara Ram 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 Shri Rama Raghubara Ram 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 Shri Shri Pati Rama Kela Shri Shri Pati Rama Kela Ram 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 Shri Ram 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 Shri Ram.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Mm.
Here is a question. It feels strange to observe the attitude to drop. I get confused and think that maybe I'm not doing my job well because I don't feel as invested as before. Can you tell me more about how this attitude change manifests in daily life? You see, it can be confusing because one is used to the drama, okay? And when you drop the D from drama, you get Rama, which was the bhajan, the last bhajan we heard. So it is dropping the drama to understand that one is non separate from Rama. That is what it takes. And so how does one do that? The it is not apathy, because one can go to the other extreme very easily. And then one can think that aloofness is a quality of being a Vedantin. I'm, what is that in Hindi? We say, Pahunch Gaya. I have reached. I am a Mahatma. I'm a great soul that has already reached the destination. And I'm not affected by anything. I'm totally aloof to the sorrows and pains of the world and to the sorrows and pains of all the lowly mortals somewhere. And I am just, in myself. This is a hubris. This is not Vedanta. And Vedanta is, the art of being in the world but not of it. That is the art. And of course, it's a it's a very it's not it's easier said than done. Much easier said than done, because what happens is that when one is engaged in the affairs of the world, one gets entangled, and one thinks that one has to be apathetic or aloof. So in the beginning there may be a little yo-yo going up, down, and there might be some, you go too much one way and then you slowly pull yourself back and then you come back, and then you go too much the other way. Oh no, I'm getting stuck. And so it requires sakshita, witnessing, a gentle vigilance and discipline of witnessing. And not, this is not a permission to unleash the inner cop, who the police, who in the form of the inner child that keeps blowing the whistle and saying, you can't be a karma yogi, you can't be a jnani, you can't do anything right. No, it's a gentle witnessing. And I saw someone, mother cat, in the middle of the road, surrounded by a few kittens. And the kittens were going here, going there, and the mother was just happily on her side. She was feeding, some of the kittens were feeding off of her, and and then they would feel full and they would just wander around here and there. And she was relaxed. She knew what each one was doing, all four or five of them. She knew where they were and what each one was doing. And then if one of them strayed too far, she would get up and then drag it back with her mouth. And then she would lie again on her side and watch them with happiness and pride and let go with a kind of a relaxed attitude. And that I watching this cat, this mummy cat, I just thought, this is this is a very nice metaphor to living in the world with a gentle vigilance of everything around, and a gentle compassionate vigilance of everything within as well. And that is the key. This is exactly the key. And so the aloofness comes not from Vedanta. The aloofness is a masquerade, it's an impostor. It masquerades as a knowledgeable being, but it is an unresolved, hurt part of one which is afraid to do what needs to be done. Again, we use the mechanisms of a gentle vigilance, gentle discipline, compassionate overseeing. And so that is what it is. The investment can drop. That's not the problem, is not that. But the work is still done, because people depend on you for that work to be done. Even if they are not directly depending upon you for the fruits of that action, They are still depending upon you, because the fact that you are doing something in a certain way is inspiring others around you. And so you do it with complete, you do it with so no longer do you do something with passion, you do something now with compassion. That kindness and that compassion, when it is pulled, when you draw that compassion out, then what happens is that you firmly, more and more firmly, abide in the knowledge. So, like a lotus that grows in the mud but is not affected, does never becomes dirty, because the lotus has small hairs on its leaves and on the petals, the lotus flower. So even if you sling some mud at it, that mud will just drop away. It doesn't affect the flower. So this is the something um, that is talked about a lot in the Shastra. The lotus becomes a wonderful metaphor both in Hinduism and in Buddhism for that untouched Atma, unaffected by all the mudslinging, the sorrows, and everything of the world. So one is in the world firmly, fully, lovingly, and then one is able to cognitively drop the investment gently. That is, it's there is no recipe for it. As I said, you do it and go too much the other way, and you pull back, and then you go this way too much, you get more and more aloof, then you pull back. So it's about finding a happy center. Then next one, when we are doing japa dhyana, the mind wanders, but the chant goes on well enough. Who realizes it is wandering, and who is alerted, and who corrects the course? This is a very nice question. Okay, during japa, then the mind goes, but then we are told to bring the mind back. Who is bringing the mind back? On one level, the answer to all the questions is Bhagavan. That is really what is at the back of everything. But then, if you want an empirical answer, it is the one who is meditating. Who is the one that is meditating? The body is not meditating. Oh, of course, the body is meditating. How do you say I'm sitting like this and the head, neck, and back in the straight line? That is just a posture. The body is not meditating. And you cannot even say, really speaking, that the mind is meditating, because the mind wants to get distracted constantly. And so, who is the meditator? The one who suffers from the restlessness of the mind, the one who wants shanti, the one who wants to abide in a certain peaceful attitude, the one who wants to do sadhana, disciplines, spiritual austerities, the one who wants to gain something out of the sadhana, the one who wants to mentally pray and then wants the phala of the prayer. This is the one. And who is that? The I notion that obtains within the body mind sense complex and is yet separate from the body mind sense complex. And that I notion, the ahankara, that is identified with the body mind sense complex inextricably so, is the one sitting down to meditate. It makes the body sit down, it clears the mind, yeah, it tries to clear the mind, and the mind does its own thing, because as we know, the mind is chanchala. And then what happens? The mind wanders, and then you bring it back. That I notion brings it back, the ahankara brings it back, and the ahankara corrects the course. The ahankara is not acting. That's why I said the answer to all this is Bhagavan, because the ahankara is not an independent actor. The ahankara, in order to have this vigilance and this gentle discipline, has to align itself with the sakshi, the witness, which is Bhagavan, whose truth is Bhagavan. So the ahankara extricates itself from the raga dveshas with which it is normally aligned, from the body mind sense complex with which it appears to be naturally aligned and identified, and for the period of meditation it is told to align itself, identify itself with the sakshi, Bhagavan. And so then witnessing the mind, the ahankara says, "Haha, I am not the mind. I'm noticing, hey, you are straying. I have to bring you back." Like the mummy cat, I have to bring you back so that you just don't wander away. Back to Rama, back to Om Namah Shivaya. And then again the mind wanders. For a minute the ahankara goes off with it. And then, because it is keeping on, the practice is to align the ahankara with the sakshi, so that in the non meditative periods you can really have an open eye meditation. Why? Because in let's say you meditate for half an hour, and in the rest of the waking time, another 12 and a half hours, you can still be meditating differently. The practice of meditation, closed eye meditation, helps you to be aware of yourself as Sakshi even during the open eye and the quote unquote non meditative periods. So you go about the day with alertness, with a gentle vigilance, and with the recognition that you are not what is happening to the body, the mind, the feelings, emotions, etc., the sense organs. You are that witness. That witness is very close to Bhagavan, because you are witnessing everything, and you are that self luminous consciousness, that self evident I that is witnessing everything within and without. That is what it is. I feel another bhajan coming on. Am I right?
There. Kalima, 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 Kalima. Kalima, 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 Kalima. Lakshmi Ma, 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 Amba 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 ma. Durga ma, 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 Durga ma. Durga Ma, Durga Ma, Durga Ma, Durga Ma, Durga Ma, Amba Ma, Amba Ma, Amba Ma, Amba Ma. Lakshmi Ma, Lakshmi Ma, Lakshmi Ma, Lakshmi Ma, Kali 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 Ma.
Thank you. Thank you. I see you have a question. You may go now.
Oh, oh, yes, thank you. So, oh, change this. Question has to do with it has to do with well, well the pursuits of I've heard about the artha and kama pursuits, dharma and moksha pursuits, and the shreyas and priyas, and I'm trying to find out where this common fixation of watching bad news comes in. We watch and we read the news, and I start to think, oh well, yeah, people pursue wealth and they pursue pleasure and they pursue doing the right action, but why would somebody watch all bad news and horrible news and feel like you can't even escape from it or pull yourself away from it when you see all that news? And what is that, some kind of reversed pleasure approach, or is it maybe it's the dharma and you want to do something about it to make it right, or is there anything healthy about about watching that? I'm kind of curious. It takes a lot of time and effort and energy. It's draining, and it seems feels like a distraction and an obstacle to spiritual pursuits, and I'm wondering how to address that.
Wonderful question.
Mm,
Um, in short, the answer is it's an addiction.
mm, mm,
And it is following the news is an addiction. It's not any different. Following the news, there is nothing wrong, because you're in the world and it's nice to be aware of what's happening. It's good to know the name of the president of any country that you're living in, and these are all some kind of transaction thing. It's good to know if there is anything going on, any big injustice that if perhaps you can do something about, and if something, if you can help, that there is an objective value. But then what you are describing is not that, it has gone way beyond that. In your description, what I hear is that, the news as an addiction. This is no different than being addicted to some soap opera. What is going to happen next? What's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen next week? And it's no different than being addicted to some TV shows, being addicted to something. It is an addiction. And the root cause of this addiction, like any other addiction, is the distaste for leading one's own life. The sense of emptiness and alienation that one finds in one's own life, one is either unable to address, or one feels afraid to address, or one feels alone and unsupported to address, because there is not Vedanta. Vedanta has not sunk in. Either there is no Vedanta or Vedanta has not sunk in fully. And therefore, this is most addictions arise from a mechanism of avoidance. What do they avoid? What do these mechanisms avoid? These mechanisms avoid looking within, looking at the big hole in the heart and obsessing about a pothole on the road and writing letters to the editor and writing letters to the municipal authorities and getting all riled up about this. It's a distraction. It's because one is unable to address that hole, the black hole of insecurity and pain and sorrow. This is what it is. And Pujya Swamiji, uh, in his youth, he used to tell this story about his own life, that he was very fond of reading the news. But then, after reading the news, because in those days the news was not like in bites, you didn't get Twitter, you didn't have Facebook, you didn't have all these online, all these things were not there. All you got was the morning paper, and then you could turn on the radio for some news 3 or 4 times a day, and you didn't have many channels with a spin on it. We just had one channel, and you just all India radio you put on and you listen to the news. This is how it used to be. And so he used to do that. He used to listen to All India Radio, and then he used to read the newspaper in the morning. And then he found that after he listened to the news, his heart would have a sinking feeling. Like, what is the news full of? Somebody died, somebody killed somebody, there was an accident, two political parties are fighting it out, and both the politicians standing for the elections are equally corrupt. In fact, both of them are behind the bars. One is behind the bar where you go drinking, and the other one is literally behind the bars, and from jail is fighting the elections. This happens in India all the time. And why in India? In America also it happens. And so therefore, this is, so then he told himself, let me see what happens if I do not read the news, or the newspaper, or listen to the news for a whole year. So he did this sankalpa for himself, and then he stopped listening to the news, or reading the paper for a whole year. And then whatever little addiction was there was gone, whatever desire was there was gone. He had plenty of other things to think about, and he spent his time in the knowledge, all these things. This was when he was a student, when he was in his early 20s, when he had just started to attend satsangs with Swami Chinmayanandaji. This is the story from that time. And then and he went more than 1 year, 1.5 years, 18 months, 20 months went by. And then as he was going in the ashram, he happened upon a newspaper. So he said, maybe I have missed out a lot in these 18 months. Let me just pick it up and read it. And then again he was reading it with a certain objectivity, because not having looked at the news for 18 months. And then he found that the headlines hadn't changed at all. Somebody died, somewhere an earthquake, somewhere a tsunami, somewhere somebody stole something from somebody, adharma prevails, and then one politician is beating the other one on the head, and then again some corruption in the higher echelons of the government. And one government is falling somewhere, another government is rising, and of course the prices are also rising, and then there is inflation, and wherever there is inflation there is a protest against inflation, and so the people are taking out big dharanas, morchas, what are they called, big processions of protest. And then he put the paper down and came to the conclusion, why, I haven't missed anything at all. So, this life, samsara goes on. The jagat is what it is. The Jagat would not be the Jagat if there was no skirmish, like a polarity rub. The Jagat is what it is because each thing is rubbing against the other, one thing is colliding against the other, moving towards one another, going approach, avoid, pravritti, nivritti. This is the Jagat. And it feels good to have a newspaper or in hand, or go to a, go look at the television or go to a website where the news gives, because in the beginning you are in charge of the news. You approach the news with an objectivity. I, as a daily consumer, need to be plugged in and need to know what is happening. This is an acceptable place, because you are a place to be, because you are approaching it from an objectivity. But it does not take very long for that objectivity to turn into subjectivity, for you to get angry, for you to get upset, for you to personally feel involved, feel cheated of your tax dollars because they are going for some useless thing. And then you get all, the heart is in a knot. And then, the Upanishad starts to look less and less appetizing, because the desire for freedom must be channeled towards the study of the Upanishad. Otherwise, it fritters itself out and it goes off, leaving a smoky odor behind. Like when you blow the candle, an unpleasant odor is left, even if it is a scented candle, when you blow out the flame. So similarly, when the desire for freedom is diverted to arthakama pursuits, then this is what happens. So, two things are needed for that nascent flame of spiritual, for the desire for spiritual growth, mumuksha, that has to be protected. Protected from the buddhi, protected from the ahankara itself. And so, in the beginning, it is good to drop this addiction of being totally enchanted by the news and addicted to the news. Later on, one can pick it up when one has enough objectivity. When one is firmly in the Vidya, then one is not shaken. The news is what it is, and you're not shaken. You commiserate with people's sorrows, you empathize, but you're not shaken up. You are not disappointed, because you are not trying to milk from the Jagat what it is incapable of giving, which is limitless joy, which is the nature of yourself. So your muscles, your objectivity muscles, get stronger in the moments of this vairagya from the news. It is a very good thing actually in the initial stages of the study. It's good to look at it once in a while, but sometimes people just are so obsessed with it. That is where one would rather turn the light on the homicides here and on the emptiness here, on the kidnapping of the buddhi here, instead of looking at somebody kidnapped somebody in the world. So, this is not an aloofness to the Jagat. This is strengthening those muscles of objectivity and compassion without being swayed. Like, the Bhagavad Gita talks about when you light the lamp, yatha deepo nivatastha nengate sopama smrita. So the light needs to be protected from the wind. Nivata deepavat, like a light which is protected from the winds. So the news winds, the news devatas, also they are very tricky. In the beginning, you think you have a hold on them, but then they hold on to you. And so therefore, with anything, moderation is the key. Okay? Yeah. Then another question, Pujya Swamiji. auto corrected to Pudji Swamiji. That is not the idea. So Pujya Swamiji talks about emotional and intellectual values of objects. This is in the Bhagavad Gita home study. When we try to control our mind, our senses and mind, which value do we drop first, or do we drop both values at the same time? Very nice question. First of all, we neither try to control the senses nor try to control the mind. The word that is better used, again Pujya Swamiji's word, is manage. You manage the mind. You manage the desires. You manage the senses. And so that is, that is a small thing to understand. And then, so a little note on the object. See, the emotional value for an object is subjective value. The subjective value that one has for an object is what is called an emotional value. And every object has, an intellectual value. An intellectual value is a little more objective. Yes, there is a desire for it, but it is, it is more in keeping with the empirical world and the reality of what one is pursuing, any goal that one is pursuing at the same time. The emotional value is the value which is a value added value to that particular object. The emotional value, for example, is expressed in sentences like I cannot live without this or that. Whether it's an object or a person, when you feel that way, I cannot live without so and so, I cannot live without such and such, that is an emotional value. Obviously, because it is not true. It is not empirically true. So this emotional value is one's own projection, one's own adhyasa. I cannot live with this, I cannot live without this. When it comes to that, when the emotional value for a particular object gets bound up in the raga dveshas, that is what is emotional value. When a particular value for an object gets expressed through one's raga dveshas strongly, that is what is called an emotional value. Because obviously this is not correct. That you cannot live without something or the other is not right. And so obviously there is an addiction there is a fear there is an sense of incompleteness there is a sense of some kind of a, what is that called? Some kind of a alienation there. Now that has to be healed with love, with the Shastra. Then what is left is the intellectual value, in the sense of you as a pragmatic individual have determined a particular goal and a particular course of action to reach that particular goal. And then in that process have determined that the addition of this particular object in your life would be the way to go. You might be right, you need not be right, but this is the intellectual value where some viveka, and then here we are not talking of viveka in terms of nitya and anitya vastu, we are talking of a relative viveka. In order to get this promotion, these are the games I have to play, this is what I have to do. I have to make sure that the boss is happy with me. I have to put out so much work. I have to be better than all these other people. And in order to do that, what do I need? I need a new computer. Let's say this is what you say, because the one I have is not fast enough and what not. And here, this is an intellectual value for the computer, where you are not saying I cannot live without this computer. You're not saying that. You have determined through some reasoning and some deployment of logic and the connection between, cause and effect, the effect being your promotion and the cause being, you've examined whatever is in the way and have decided that this computer that you have is very slow, and then since you're working from home you have to do this. You ask the management, they are not going to give you a new one, and now you have determined that this is what you need. And so this is a, to get ahead in life, in your job, this is an intellectual value. So intellectual value can also have some small projections and whatnot, doesn't matter. But this is the difference. And so, which do you drop first? Obviously, the emotional value. That is what is dropped. The intellectual value is not a problem, because when you drop the emotional value, then it becomes very, very clear. When you drop the shobhana adhyasa or ashobhana adhyasa. Shobhana adhyasa means a kind of a seeing something more in an object than what there is. Again, a kind of a personal projection. Ashobhana adhyasa means a kind of a personal negative projection. Shobhana adhyasa, positive projection. So when you say, oh, this person is the end, be all and end all of my life, Shobhana Adhyasa. When they disappoint you, then you say, I don't want to have anything to do with you. Get away from me. I cannot live with you. Ashobhana Adhyasa. The truth is neither this nor that. This is the emotional value. It wreaks havoc because it causes binding desires. These projections arise out of desires and then keep you embroiled in those binding desires. And then the Bhagavad Gita says, Rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. So the emotional value is withdrawn, the intellectual value prevails somehow. Yeah, I wish I could have had that. I think that would have made my life better, and maybe I should get that. You are contemplating here, and then the Bhagavad Gita says, even though the emotional, you have withdrawn the emotional value attached to a particular object, maybe there is a kind of an intellectual value that prevails. Maybe that subjectivity hidden in the intellectual value will drop on its own if you set your sights to Brahman, to the study of the Bhagavad Gita, to the study of yourself. Then, as I said in the earlier class today, with the growing objectivity, the objectivity grows. And with the growing objectivity, the growing clarity, that is what you enjoy the moksha in the form of growing clarity. It is just very, very beautiful. So I hope that, that helps that, yeah. Any other questions? Either talk or write or raise your hand. And so that is good. This very good satsang. We will close with a bhajan. I'll say the closing prayer and then we'll close with the bhajan after that. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.